This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the town of North Haven.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to make sure everyone can hear me in the back. Volume is good? Okay, thank you very much. And welcome to North Haven Economic Development Commission Fall Breakfast, and thank you for coming. What a great group, what a great crowd. We really appreciate the support we get for each of our breakfasts. And I think we're going to have very informative presentations today from our special guest speaker, David Lehman, Commissioner, Department of Economic and Community Development, and from, of course, Mike Frieda, our first selectman. I'd like to recognize Dave Yaccarino, Representative Dave Yaccarino. He's here today. I would also like to recognize our third select woman, Sally Blamey. She's in the audience. I didn't skip over our second select person. He was not able to make it today. And I'd also like to recognize a couple of folks in the audience. Our Chief of Police, Tom McLaughlin, is here. And then there's four others, and it would be Ed Swinkowski, our Director of Finance, Mike Maturo, our Director of Field Operations, Pat Laturza, Director of Library Services, and Lynn Sadowski from Department of Public Works. Okay. Of course, I can't forget to introduce the members of the North Haven Economic Development Commission. If you could please stand. Frank Marr, Steve Fontana, Radha Prasad, Alan Sturts, Deb Moore, and Bob Zambrano, members of our commission. Now, what I'd like to do, this is a little off my agenda, or the agenda. I would like to take a moment for a special recognition. Many of, if not all of you, know that the Connecticut Economic Resource Center and the great work that they do for DECD, UI, real estate professionals, and others, and have partnered with all of them in the great work that they do. CERC has been a huge supporter of North Haven, helping us with market studies, municipal training, grant writing, and so much more. Bob Santee, who is in the audience today, he has been the CERC's president and CEO for many years. And he has since retired, and he has been here at almost every breakfast since we started 10 years ago. And as a matter of fact, he drove here from Rhode Island this morning. And I'd like to recognize that at last night's CEDAS event, the Connecticut Economic Development Association, their annual meeting, Bob was recognized with the Kenneth L. Roberts Lifetime Achievement Award. Congratulations, Bob. Okay, now what I'd like to do is get back to the agenda, and if I could invite Garrett Sheehan up to the podium. He's going to bring the president and CEO of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce and the Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce. He's going to give us an update. Thank you, Garrett.
Thanks, Richard. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. Always a privilege to be here in North Haven talking about economic development. This is one of the communities that really does economic development right. A big hand to Mike Frieda, First Selectman, but the entire team, because it takes a team to do economic development. I know Richard and the commission are extremely involved in bringing new companies to town. And we've been talking a lot about North Haven over the last year, especially with Amazon opening up, and I know there is a lot more to come. On behalf of the Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce and Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce, we're very proud to partner with North Haven. We've launched an economic development program in just the last few months, and we've tapped a North Haven resident, Ann Benowitz, who I know is here with us this morning to lead up that effort. And we've already been going out on outreach visits, along with Mike, with Richard, in town, speaking with companies, and we're gaining a lot of insight. So many of these companies we've already spoken to, we know them well, but when you have a sit-down conversation and you start to ask them detailed questions about their workforce, what is it that will help them grow and expand here in North Haven, you start finding more answers, and those are things that we take back, we put into our policy, we bring back to the town for ways that we can assist the business and continue to grow the economy for the entire region. So we are extremely grateful to be able to partner with North Haven and glad to be here today. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks so much, Garrett. We look forward to working with you on that project. So I don't forget, on each of you should have received a survey at the table. Please, at the end of the program, we appreciate it if you would fill that out. It helps us determine what the interest is for our breakfast, and we want to be able to get your input on who we should bring forward as speakers. So don't forget to fill that out before you go. So now we are very fortunate and thankful to have some wonderful sponsors for this breakfast. We have Wellness Partners, Patriots, Newtown Savings Bank, Ameriprise Financial, and Celia and D'Onofrio. What I'd like to do now is we're going to have very brief presentations from those folks. I'm calling it speed networking this morning because we want to give them an opportunity to say a few words. And we're going to bring up Wellness Patriots first. Now, Wellness Patriots supports nonprofits throughout the area, and as far as their sponsorship, they asked if three could come up and say a few words. These are just three of many organizations that Wellness Patriots assist. So I'd like to call up for New Reach, Marta Goldman. From the Underground, Anna Marie Boulay. And for the Mark Anthony Casella Fund, Nick Casella. You could come up. So, folks, remember, this is speed networking.
Yes.
Ladies first.
Good morning. My name is Marta Goldman. I'm the Director of Investments and Partnerships for New Reach. We're an organization that's based in New Haven, and we work primarily in Greater New Haven and Fairfield County, and our focus is on homelessness, and we provide a full spectrum of services from eviction prevention to supportive housing and shelter. And we want to thank Wellness Patriots for inviting us to be here today. We have been very grateful for their support, and they do such wonderful work in helping businesses create savings that can then help support organizations like ours throughout the community. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Anna Marie Boulay, and I am the Executive Director of the Underground Lighting Way to Freedom. And this is a faith-based initiative in the state of Connecticut that seeks to serve youth and children who have been trafficked. We know that that's happening in our state. It was reported last year that over 1,050 children have been referred to the care line in the state of Connecticut as potential traffic victims. As a church and a faith-based initiative, we want to stand in the gap for that, and so we are constantly seeking to bring awareness of this topic to the communities and also serve those who have been victimized in many, many ways, in many different capacities. Last year, we were trying to launch a Fox 61 campaign, which we successfully did with the help of Wellness Patriots. We were able to reach, we're in the middle of that campaign now. We've been able to reach over 900,000 households with this message of awareness in order to protect our youth. And so we are hugely indebted to Wellness Patriots and the great work that they do. For charities like ours, if you'd like to learn more, as the first speaker said, Wellness Patriots will be happy to help you learn what you can do in order to support charities like ours and or your favorite charities. Thank you so much for your attention.
Good morning, everyone. I wish I was like Mike Frieda and could remember everything here on this piece of paper, but I am not. So please excuse me if I look down. But good morning. My name is Nick Casella. I'm a board member of the Mark Anthony Casella Education Fund, which is a memorial fund established in memory of my son Mark shortly after his passing 11 years ago as a result of an automobile accident. Our family, for our family, the devastation of such a loss is truly indescribable, but the wound can never really heal. But our faith in God and our family's love for one another gives us the strength to move forward. So what began as a scholarship just 10 years ago has also grown into a fund that provides for families that have children with special needs, whether it be from a birth defect or a debilitating disease and so on. These families desperately need help with all kinds of things like special wheelchairs, equipment to assist with breathing, with eating, and simply communicating. Needs that cost above and beyond what conventional insurance plans will cover. A ramp, transportation, reconstruction of the home to accommodate the disability, so that these children can perhaps live up to their abilities. We like to believe that we're making some kind of a difference in their lives. So our son, Mark, blessed us with almost 24 years of joy, and we were so proud of his accomplishments. So while our loss is great, though, we cannot imagine what the parents of these special needs children go through day after day, month after month, indeed year after year. What we have chosen to do is channel our tremendous loss into helping others and offering a little hope and lots of love. So I wish to thank Wellness Patriots for their financial generosity and the opportunity to allow us to speak here today. And just as important, it's noteworthy for every business owner in this room and today to understand that Wellness Patriots, aside from their generosity in the community, is a firm that can show any employer with 30 or more employees the opportunity for significant tax savings when wellness benefits are part of their employee benefit package. So I would strongly recommend and urge business owners to seek out Wellness Patriots and find out what exactly they do. Because if they can help you save quite a few tax dollars at the end of the year, it's more money that you can give back to the community. Thank you very much, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Those were great presentations. I would like to now call up Rich DeMeo for Newtown Savings Bank. He's going to make a brief presentation. Mark Candido is unable to make it today. He's not feeling well.
Thank you, Rich. Good morning, everyone. So if you've been to these breakfasts before, and many of you have because there's a lot of familiar faces here, you've seen us up here before. We enjoy very much working with Mike and Rich and sponsoring this breakfast twice a year. As Rich said, Mark can't be here today. Tony Rossley, my other partner in our Hamden office, couldn't be here as well, but they send their regards. So Newtown Savings Bank, you've heard the pitch before. We've been around since before the Civil War. We're a community bank, a mutual savings institution, specializing in all types of commercial and residential lending. And that's what we do in the New Haven Regional Lending Center in Hamden. We've been there for 3 years. We just renewed our lease. We're doing that well. Doing a lot of our business in North Haven, which is kind of nice because both Tony, Mark, and I have all been longtime North Haven residents. A couple of additions to staff that I'd like to point out. We're actually expanding. We've recently hired a young lady named Dana Minori Ulstad, who's joined us as a commercial banker just recently. And here this morning is Joanne Policiano, who is our new residential mortgage originator in the Hamden office. So we're adding the staff, having a great year, enjoying the market very much, and just happy to be involved. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rich. Now I'd like to ask Jeff Jolly, financial advisor for Ameriprise Financial, to come up.
Thanks, Rich. Everybody else was smart and sat up there. I had the long walk, apparently. I just want to thank Rich and Mr. Frieda and the Economic Development Commission for allowing me a couple minutes to speak today. As Rich said, my name is Jeff Jolly. I'm a certified financial planner with Ameriprise Financial. I have a practice here in North Haven. I've also been a lifelong resident of North Haven. I won't date either of us and say when you were my Boy Scout leader, but it was a while ago.
A couple of years.
Just a few. So as I said, I'm a certified financial planner. What differentiates my practice from a lot of other advisors in the area, I think, are two things. One is our personalized approach to the investment strategies that we employ for our clients. And the second thing is our service model. Our personal approach is very different from most advisors in that a lot of advisors that you'll meet today have prefabricated models that they will put you in based on your age, your risk tolerance, your investment objectives, and you sit in that investment model along with hundreds of other people. What we do differently is we do a needs-based approach. We do a comprehensive financial plan before we go and actually build the investment model. Then we custom tailor the investment strategy to the client. What I find is that's a more efficient and a more personalized portfolio for the client that tends to do better over time. The second item is our service model. Each and every one of my clients knows that myself or a member of my staff is available to them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because we found that the needs of affluent investors tend to not run on a 9 to 5 clock. So for that, we put ourselves out there to be much more available than your typical advisor. So I think that's kind of what differentiates us. If you or anybody you know is in need of a financial planner, has retired and needs to do a rollover, or just wants a consultation, feel free to reach out to me. All of our consultations are free, and I'm happy to help anybody that needs it. And on a side note, as somebody that is financially minded and economically minded, I just want to commend Mr. Frieda and the Commission on the great work they do to bring businesses into North Haven, to help expand our tax base, to keep the mill rate low, and to really make North Haven just a more desirable place to live, which obviously has a positive effect on property values. So to you guys, I just want to say kudos and thank you for a job well done.
And last but not least, I'd like to call up Jeff D'Onofrio from Ciolo and D'Onofrio. Ciolo. I should be able to say that as an Italian.
Chula. Good morning. I was told I have 30 seconds. Next Friday will mark our 23rd anniversary at the best office building in North Haven, 127 Washington Avenue. It's been a pleasure and a delight to support the town over the last 23 years. Mike and his administration have done a phenomenal job, really taken business development and support of the business community to another level. We're a law firm. We've got 4 lawyers. We do municipal law, construction law, business litigation. We practice all over the state of Connecticut. There's no better place, quite frankly, than North Haven to own and operate a business. And a big part of that really is Mike and the team in Town Hall and their hands-on approach and business-friendly approach. They really get it. At a time when the political rancor around Connecticut and Washington, D.C. seems to have peaked, There's none of that nonsense going on in North Haven. It's the citizens, the taxpayers, the businesses of North Haven always come first. And it's just been a phenomenal 23 years for us, and we look forward to the next 23. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And thank all of the speakers. That was a great speed networking opportunity, and I appreciate your comments. Excellent. So now let's begin the program. Right now, I would like to invite Representative Dave Yaccarino to the podium to introduce our special guest speaker, David Lehman.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you all for being here this morning. It's wonderful to see, to what Jeff D'Onofrio said, North Haven is a great place to do business, a great place to live because of our administration, but really it's the people of North Haven. So thank you all for being here. And for Valerie and Tammy that do so much for our community in Mike's office. I'm here to introduce David Lehman. He's a Commissioner of Economic Community Development of Connecticut. I've got to know Dave over the last 9 or 10 months. I think he's a great candidate, a great commissioner, but I don't know if we really need a commissioner when we have Lindy Gold here, who's done so much for DCD for the last 30 years. And Richard behind me, I don't know if people realize, Richard worked for DCD for many years. But to me, in all seriousness, this is one of the most important commissioners in the state of Connecticut. Like Mike does such a great job growing business in Connecticut, well, David, Commissioner Lehman, has got to do the same thing in Connecticut. And his approach is different than in the past. With all due respect, I think it's the right approach. And I'm excited to have his background, his knowledge, his energy. He's a young guy, and he really volunteered for this position. And the position of Commissioner of Economic Community Development is to grow colleges as far as manufacturing, the pipeline, science, bioscience, STEM, which I'm a strong advocate for. And David has the same appetite for that. So with that, I'm here to introduce Dave. I think he's a great guy, and I'm looking forward to listening to him this morning. Thank you. And he'll have questions and answers after. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Rich, thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me here. At the risk of maybe jumping on the bandwagon here, this is actually my second time in North Haven this week. I had the pleasure of being at Oberk Steel just down the road to announce on this past Monday, we announced a chief manufacturing officer with the governor. And I'll talk a bit more about it, but I also had the privilege of seeing Amazon and just hearing how this group talks about North Haven and what I know of the town. What I think you've done here, Mayor, and what the people have done to North Haven and how this town thinks about business and enabling business, that's what we need to do at the state level. This is a microcosm of what I think I'd like to see in Hartford and how I think the world should think about the state of Connecticut. So I realize that's easier to say than do, but I want to talk a little bit about what I think we need to do to really start to make that change. And hopefully when we're having this breakfast, and maybe not next year, but 5 years, 10 years, there is a shift in the state of Connecticut, how we think about business, how we engage business, where we are a lot more like North Haven than not. So first, let's talk. In my 8 or 9 months now in the job, I've had the opportunity to meet with close to 200 businesses all across the state, and every business has their own issues and things they want to talk about. But what I like to do is go back and look at the numbers first. And this is not about politics; it's about data first. Before we can figure out what the problem is or what the solution is, I think we need to better identify the problem. And if you look at the data as it relates to migration, income growth, job growth for the state of Connecticut over the past 10 years, it's not been good. And I think we need to agree that before we can figure out why it's not been good and what the plan is for the future. But we've been in the bottom quartile in all of those categories. And that's obviously not acceptable. If you look at the 2 preceding decades, we were doing much better than that. We've never been big in terms of population growth, but income growth, productivity growth, that has been a strength of Connecticut's. Was in the 80s and 90s, but it hasn't been over the past 10 years. So we really need to focus on that. Job creation, income growth, as well as migration, in my opinion, for the state to grow if we're going to grow the state's economy. When I think about marketing the state, part of this, and I talk to a lot of folks, some of them feel like the product is fine, we just need to sell it differently. And some people feel like the product is just, needs a lot of help regardless of how you sell it. And I think there's probably some truth to both of that. We need to focus on the product and what we're selling, but I also think we do need to change how we sell it. I think the narrative of Connecticut in particular over the past 5 to 10 years, we've let other people dictate what that narrative has been, and it's been negative by and large. So I think we need to work to change the product, but we need to do a better job of selling that product as well. And I think this is something, and I'll talk more about it, we're very focused on the perception and changing that perception as we change the product. What can we do in social media, videos on the business and citizen recruitment front to make sure people realize this is a place, Connecticut is a place where you can live, work, and play, and businesses can thrive. If you look at a lot of the metrics in terms of best states that are out there, Connecticut always does very well in quality of education, quality of healthcare, workforce, natural beauty, a number of things like that. We're top quartile by and large. Where we end up being bottom quartile is the overall tax environment. Transportation, by and large, we get nicked up on in a pretty good way. And then business friendliness, broadly defined. So I want to talk a bit more about in those three where we score poorly, what are we doing to address those things? So first off, let's talk about the tax environment. And again, this all I will also file under easier said than done. But the most important thing I think we can do as an administration is provide what I call medium to long-term tax certainty. We can talk a bit about the budget that was passed in May, but when I'm in front of businesses and they're thinking about investing here, they're thinking about bringing their families here, what they want to know is over the next 10, 20 years, is the state going to continue to increase the tax burden? And a lot of folks, and this is human nature, they look in the rearview mirror when they're driving and they see the past 10 years, the state has increased the tax burden. And the default is that's going to continue to happen because of the spending policies of the state. It's critically important that we as a government at the state level can demonstrate over the next 10 to 20 years that we can manage our liabilities, that we have significant revenue growth and have efficiencies on the expense side to show that we're not going to continue to be in everyone's pocketbook or wallet every 2 to 4 years. So I spent a lot of my time on this. I think the next 2 years, and I know the budget wasn't everyone's cup of tea, but I think it was a nice step in the right direction. But in years 3 through 10 or 3 through 15, what does that forecast look like? And that's something that I spent a lot of time on. Again, I want to work with the legislature on that because I think that is the most important thing we can do, long-term tax certainty for businesses and individuals so they realize that the state is going to be sensible and we're going to run the state like a business would run themselves. Because empirically, we haven't done that. We've borrowed a lot of money and we haven't seen the commensurate economic growth. So expect more from us on that front, but that is the most important thing I think the government can do, and we've not been able to deliver that to this point, but I think it is imperative that we do that to make sure people have the confidence that they need to invest in the state. Just a bit on the budget, and I realize it was 4 months ago at this point in time, but the budget, outside of not increasing tax rates, I know there were some adjustments to tax credits, which we can talk more about, but the state at this point has a $2.5 billion rainy day fund. We expect that to get to close to $3 billion. That actually is top quartile in terms of a rainy day buffer or a cushion. That's almost 15% of the state's operating budget. So that is something that is nice to have because when and if tax revenues do slow down, and it's more when, not if, you want to have that buffer so we don't need to immediately raise taxes there. The governor feels very strongly, as many of you know, about what he calls the debt diet, reducing bonding. The state has borrowed close to $2 billion a year over the past several years, and we haven't had that economic growth to show for it. So we're aiming to bond at least 40% less than what we've done empirically. And I have many conversations about this. Folks are fearful that the government's not going to borrow at all. We're going to make smart borrowing decisions where there is a discernible ROI, where it's important for the citizens and for businesses in the state. We should borrow. We're not going to not do any borrowing, but I think we need to do a lot less because if you look at the data again, we've borrowed a lot over the past 10 years and we don't have that economic growth. So I think we need to change the tact as it relates to how much we borrow and what we borrow for. So that the credit rating agencies and the bond market itself have been very receptive to that. The credit risk that's implied on Connecticut's bonds has actually been cut in half since January. So we'll see. I know there's still some debate with the legislature on what that bonding bill will look like, but I think the debt diet is a smart way forward for us, just given the past. You haven't seen the growth that you would have liked to see with all the borrowing that we've done. I want to make a couple more comments about government efficiency before we talk about business recruitment and some of the other initiatives. I mentioned this long-term forecast that we're endeavoring to do. Part of that is going to be on the operating side. We can talk about the unfunded pension liability, which I think is the 800-pound gorilla, if you will, in terms of how do we manage that over a 30 or 30-plus year period. But on the operating side, the government's actually seen fairly decent revenue growth. It's been on the expense side where I think there needs to be a bit more focus. And one area where I think there's the possibility for savings and efficiency over the coming years is we expect potentially up to a third of state employees to retire by 2022 because of retirement age and other inducements in how the CBAC agreement worked in 17. You could see that significant retirements in place. And the question for us is, what do you do about it? How much of that do you backfill? Do you need to backfill? Are there technology solutions that can provide a more efficient government at a lower cost to citizens? So we're spending a lot of time, in particular, Josh Jabal, who is the Department of Administrative Services Commissioner, lots of experience at IBM and as an entrepreneur. He's spending a lot of his time thinking about this. And that is an area where I'm very hopeful and believe you'll see significant expense efficiencies as well as a better government product that's delivered to you. There was a bit of, in the recent budget, there was a bit of spending for what we call the digital front door, which is the interface by which citizens are going to interact with government. And so you don't have to go to DRS for one thing and for consumer protection for another. Ideally, one website, think of it like Amazon. I realize we're right across the street, but to the extent the Connecticut government can deliver you an Amazon-like service, that is something that we need to aspire to do because it's too hard dealing with government. It's too inefficient. It's too much on paper as opposed to online. So we're spending a lot of time on trying to make it more efficient. And over the long run, there will be significant savings outside of a lot less frustration for this group in doing that. I referenced the manufacturing czar before. A few things we're doing on the business development front, which I think is important. And Representative Iaccarino alluded to kind of a different framework. We are taking a different framework in two main ways, I think, than the previous administration. First and foremost, we realize we're a relatively small state, 3.6 million people, and there are industries in the state that I think we have a real edge or comparative advantage in being in Connecticut. We want to focus on those industries. We want to focus on industries that are higher paying, higher productivity jobs. And this is as it relates to both retention and, importantly, recruitment. Higher paying, higher productivity jobs that we think can continue to succeed and thrive in the state of Connecticut. So when we think about life sciences or healthcare, financial services, manufacturing, there's probably 7 or 8 industries in my mind that we need to focus on that will grow the state's economy, that are exporting at least a portion of the goods and services out of the state or even out of the country. And those are the areas that we want to focus on as it relates to our recruitment efforts and our retention efforts, as opposed to catching a wide net where we're really focused on everything. And I think the risk when you focus on everything is, you're not going to do it as well as you'd like. So we're going to have a much more narrow focus, a targeted focus as it relates to recruitment. And then secondly, as it relates to business incentives, and this goes along with the bonding comment I made before, the government empirically, and some of this is just that's what the market was like, but there were a significant amount of incentives that were given to businesses to create jobs here, to do capital investment in the state of Connecticut. And I've spent a lot of time studying not just what we've done in Connecticut, but what's been done broadly on the incentive front. And the very short answer is the jury's still out if incentives work to grow an economy. And I think most of the research suggests that incentives don't do that. It's a diversion of funds from one group of taxpayers to another group of taxpayers. And I don't think that's appropriate and smart policy as we grow the economy. So you cannot unilaterally disarm and say we're not going to provide incentives, because I think that is the market and I think we need to be competitive. But we're going to do incentives differently. We're going to focus just on those industries that I mentioned, and the amount of the incentives that we're going to be putting forth is going to be less, so lower cost to taxpayers. And we're going to backload it, if you will. When those incentives are given, it's going to be not up front, and that's how we previously did it, but it's going to be when those jobs are created and maintained in Connecticut, when that capital investment is made in the state. So we're going to ask business to put their dollars in first and show us that the commitment, and then the state's going to be willing to share in some of that benefit with the business. But I think that's just a smarter way to do it at a lower cost for taxpayers. So that's something that we will work. We're already doing this, but we're going to work with the legislature next year to try to roll out and codify this more formally. And I'm hopeful that, because we're not spending as much money on incentives, but we are going to be more targeted, there will be more dollars for other things that I think are more important. When I think about economies that have been successful around the country, or around the world for that matter, they really have 3 main things. And it's not, business incentives are not one of those 3 things, candidly. It's, superior education, and I think we have that here in Connecticut, K through 12 as well as the higher ed. So that's something we have. superior infrastructure and transportation. There's still a lot of work that we need to do on that. Something that you may have seen in the papers, but is being rolled out, is what's called CT 2030, which is going to be a 10-year, $18 billion transportation plan, not just roads and rail, but also airports, which I know is really important here in South Central Connecticut, in particular, as well as utilizing the sea where we can. So transportation is something we need to improve, and I think there will be a significant strategic rollout of that plan shortly. And then the last point is this tax certainty point. That I started with that, and I think that is the most critical point because I feel like that credibility is something that we don't have right now, but we need to have to make that investment necessary and happen here in the state of Connecticut. The last comment I want to make is I've talked a lot in my time, and one of my strong views about the next 25 years of success in the state from the economy's perspective is, we have been a state of suburban towns by and large, or smaller towns, as well as more rural areas, and we haven't had a big city. And again, I don't think we're going to have a big city, certainly not one that's going to compete with New York or a Boston for that matter. And I actually don't think we're supposed to compete with New York or Boston, personally. But I think we do need to continue to invest in our urban areas like New Haven and this New Haven area. So we're actually having an Opportunity Zone conference in New Haven next Wednesday. And there'll be close to 250, 300 people there, we estimate. But it'll be a day where the governor is going to actually host the conference, and we're going to show folks in the state's 72 opportunity zones, which are designated districts where you can take advantage of a federal tax incentive, not a state tax incentive, but a federal tax incentive to create, whether it's real estate investment or business. And a lot of our opportunity zones, over 95% of them are in cities. We want to continue to increase the density in our cities to make sure they're places people want to live, with people ultimately where they have great jobs and higher incomes in those areas. Because I think our cities need to get to what I call critical mass a bit more. When your biggest cities are 150, 170,000, that's a bit small. And I think we've got the suburban and small town thing covered here in Connecticut, but we need to be able to offer more of a city-like environment. And I think we are very close in New Haven, Stamford, and Hartford in particular. Bridgeport's close as well. But I think ultimately that is an area where we want to continue to focus and where we want to put some of those dollars in terms of investment alongside the private sector are in those city areas. Because I think the cities have been, and I think will continue to be, a big engine for growth. So with that, I'm mindful of I'm not conforming to the speed dating or speed networking here. So I'm going to stop, but I'm happy to take any questions you guys have or chat about anything I may not have mentioned. And Rich will be coordinating those questions.
No, not at all. Any questions for the commissioner?
I don't have a question, but one thing could I?
Absolutely.
The biggest hurdle for Commissioner of Economic and Community Development is the legislature. And I meant to say that, no disrespect to the legislature, but you have competing interests around the state. And I serve in the bonding subcommittee and the finance committee, when we have a project that we want to cut back on bonding, some parts of the state, some reps want that bonding. They want that money. And that's the fight all the time. And you've been in some of those meetings, I think, in our bonding subcommittee meeting. And you can only give so much money. You have to think of the whole state as a whole. And I think that's the holistic approach Dave, as Commissioner Lehman's going to take, and I think that's the approach you should take. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think it's, you have to look at the greater good, and you can't have everything for yourself. Right?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And the governor and Representative Iaccarino has seen this. The governor is very, very firm on this point. And again, we don't have a bonding bill right now, and I'm not sure the last time when that happened, but the state has borrowed a significant amount less this year because I think there is this fear that the tendency is to borrow. When I first got to Hartford in February, and I worked in the bond market and the lending market in a bank previously. I never use the word bonding, but in Hartford, some folks use the word bonding like it means gift as opposed to credit card. And the reality is, it means credit card. So when I hear someone say, well, let's get some bonding money for that, say that same sentence, but use credit card. I'm going to have my kids or my grandkids pay for that. Would you still think it's a good idea? And I think that's the framework we need to think about. We need to live within our means. And the governor he's excellent on this point. I mean, very, very regimented, and to the extent there's a private sector solution or that we don't need to do that, or there's not a discernible ROI that is right for taxpayers of Connecticut, he says no. And I think the other thing I just mentioned on this point is, I think we need to be more strategic because I feel like there is a tendency to be reactive at times. Oh, we've not dealt with that, so let's deal with it now and get some bonding dollars, as opposed to, all right, we're going to give, I'll give an example. Brownfields is within the Department of Economic and Community Development. So those are very important dollars, actually, in my mind, that should be spent to remediate contaminated sites in a state that has many of them. And a lot of them are in our cities that we need to see redeveloped for those neighborhoods to truly improve. We'll probably have 30, maybe even $35 million of brownfields money when a bonding bill comes out. But we're going to have a very clear process with metrics on how we should be giving those out. It shouldn't be, in my mind, political. It should be, let's make sure there's the right return. Whatever metrics box you want to desire, let's make sure you have the right return on those dollars for state taxpayers, because that's who's going to foot the bill at the end of the day. So that may have been a longer answer than you wanted, Dave, but.
Frank?
Yeah, David, the manufacturing czar, do we expect him to be more focused on attracting business into new manufacturing into the state, or helping existing manufacturers? And if the latter, how do we engage in that process?
The short answer to your question is yes. No, the manufacturing, it's a great question, and I realize I didn't really elaborate on that. So the manufacturing czar is a new position. He'll sit in, a gentleman named Colin Cooper of Whitcraft Industries, 25 years of manufacturing experience in the state. He's going to do three main things in my mind. One is he's going to be in charge of setting a manufacturing strategy for the state. And this actually relates not just to existing manufacturers, but to recruitment. But the reality is, when I think about, if you look empirically who's succeeded in the state, we need to focus on who's here already. They're the ones that are most likely to grow here. I think there's this appeal of attracting a manufacturer, a business from another state or another country, but that's a lot harder. And if you think about resources or spend, we want to focus on what's here and how those folks can grow. So he's going to help with the strategy on how we should be enabling our current manufacturers as it relates to workforce or regulations as well. And then when we think about the constraints to folks' businesses, I referenced workforce, but the big issue in manufacturing, as many folks know, is significant retirements over the next 10 years. And even with that, there are a lot of jobs, thousands of jobs that are open right now and not being filled. So how do we attract young folks to those jobs, or more folks to the state of Connecticut to take those jobs? And the important thing about the czar position, outside of working with manufacturers and with our recruitment efforts, the czar is going to work across, and we're calling it the chief manufacturing officer because the czar sounded too dictatorial and male, even though Colin is one. But ultimately, this individual, in the recruitment process, we had the Department of Education, the Department of Labor, Office of Higher Education, UConn, the Board of Regents, in addition to DECD at the table and the governor's office, because it was really important to the industry, and we heard this loud and clear. This can't be another government silo trying to operate in their own silo. This needs to be someone that can operate across government and with the legislature as well. And that's kind of how we set it up, and I'm very positive, I know it's early, but I'm very positive that Colin's going to have a pretty big impact on the industry.
Yes, Garrett.
David, I think it'd be great if you could talk a little bit about CERC. I know the governor has taken an interest in CERC and put a lot more investment into it, and now making a partnership with private industry to try to advance the state.
Yep, thank you. And I realize Bob is here as well today. So CERC, many of you are familiar with CERC, but if not, I will just briefly. CERC is Rocky Hill entity that has worked with the state, I think, for 25 years to basically help advance the state's economy. What we're tweaking is the CERC-DECD relationship. And we've recently hired, well, not recently, over the summer, a new CEO of CERC, Peter Dinius, who replaced Bob. And Peter is in the process of building out his team right now. The goal in the partnership between DECD and CERC, how it's going to work differently, is we're going to try to complement each other a bit more, and there not be any redundancy or overlap between what the state is doing and what CERC is doing. And the thought is for CERC to be, you can call it the tip of the spear as it relates to retention and recruitment. One entity that is accountable and feels ownership for business recruitment in the state and business retention in the state. So as it relates to workforce and to the extent there are incentives, DECD is still going to provide a significant role in that, especially as it relates to interacting with other parts of the government and helping navigate that for businesses. But I think we as a state will be more successful if we have the accountability and ownership for that retention and recruitment at CERC, and the goal is to staff CERC up a bit more to provide that function. So CERC, I think, had 14 or 15 full-time employees, and it'll likely have 20 to 25, I think, when all's said and done. And the focus of the hiring at CERC are for people in those core industries, core sectors that I mentioned that can help out and be a liaison and a recruiter, as well as dealing with existing businesses and figure out what can we do to make your lives easier here? What should we be doing with the legislature? So CERC's going to play a really, really important role there going forward.
All right, David, thank you very much. One last question, Lou.
David, thank you for sharing your comments about your view of the role of the state as it relates to incentives to businesses to foster development. And I understand what you're saying about the role of first seeing a commitment on the part of the business and then looking at what types of incentives and subsidies might be warranted. One of the questions that I have is, do you see a role in the future for, in Connecticut, there are so many nonprofits that do so much wonderful work that supports many of the initiatives that the state also provides funding to. When you think of initiatives that might be mutually beneficial to the business owner and to the state, do you see a way or a path in the future to reward businesses who have made financial commitments to nonprofits that serve our communities, so that basically more of the work of supporting our communities is done on a voluntary basis rather than a state subsidized basis?
It's an interesting question. I haven't thought too much about it, so I want to say yes. I'd like to think more about it and happy to have a conversation. But yeah, I think to the extent that the private sector, philanthropy, or not-for-profits can step into a role, I think generally they can be more efficient. They're closer to the field, if you will, to give a sports analogy here, to be helpful and to be useful. So if there are smart policy ways where the government can incentivize that, again, I think we need, anytime there's an incentive or a transfer from one set of taxpayers to another, I think we need to be really careful, because again, I think the data shows that if anything, that is regressive as opposed to progressive in terms of who it helps. And there are a lot of special interests there. But to the extent there's a smart policy way to enable or encourage not-for-profits to take a bigger role, I'm all for that. So I'm happy to dig in more if there's ways I can help advance that. I'd love to see that, if the state could kind of step back and let the private sector and the market do its thing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again for having me here this morning.
All right, thanks so much, David. That was a great presentation. Lots of great questions, and David will be able to hang out for a little while after the breakfast concludes. So now I'd like to invoke the chair's privilege and divert from the agenda for a minute, because we have some great news that occurred last night at the Connecticut Economic Development Association's annual meeting. CEDAS is a statewide organization of economic development professionals, land use administrators, planning professionals, and others. This year, CEDAS offered for the first time a certification program for best practices in land use, in economic development and land use administration. The North Haven Economic Development Commission submitted an application for this certification, and I am proud to report that North Haven has been certified and was awarded the accreditation along with 23 other communities at the annual meeting yesterday. This award is a validation of the hard work and dedication of our first selectman, Mike Frieda, Alan Fredrickson, our land use administrator, Vern Carlson, who I think just left, a chair of the P&Z Commission, and the EDC, Economic Development Commission. And here is the award. Thank you very much. And so with that segue, I'll go right to introducing Mike Frieda. I'll give Valerie a couple of seconds to put up the slides and invite Mike to the podium to give us an update on all the great things that are happening in North Haven. And while Valerie's doing that, I'd like to also recognize William Piper, who came in a little bit late, as he's our second selectman. William? Right, thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much, Richard. I'd like to thank our sponsors, our speakers. Great presentations. We truly appreciate your support. And David, I wanted to tell you that it's been a pleasure to work with you these past 8 months. Thank you for your support of myself and the entire town of North Haven. And to the members of the business community, you're part of the very fabric of our community. You're what makes us great in terms of economic development, reinvesting back into your businesses, your buildings, the job creation. It's greatly appreciated by me and the entire town of North Haven. I'd like to take each of you now on a pictorial review in terms of what's happening across the landscape of the town of North Haven. As I've tried to depict in previous meetings, we're going to be talking today about successes, opportunities, and what the challenges are that remain. Successes. The Devine and State Street Medical Epicenter, which was essentially an empty area back in 2009 after AT&T left that site, continues to be a resounding success, with new buildings opening up, new medical services coming in, and the continued expansion of the Yale healthcare system here in North Haven, with the emergence of a Smilow Cancer Center, and also the emergence of a musculoskeletal facility that really is very important as people get older. And we recently opened up another building there, and this has been a remarkable contribution to our great town, not only in terms of job creation, but outstanding medical services delivered. And if we were to look at it from an economic development standpoint, the multiplier effect of having this institution in North Haven continues to support the smaller businesses up and down State Street in North Haven. And if we were to define that area in terms of a large parcel, we today are collecting more tax revenue from that area than we were prior to the Yale healthcare system coming into the town of North Haven. There will be continued growth there with a couple of other new businesses, new medical service businesses coming in over the course of the next 18 months. And here is a couple of pictures as to what we see there, which was once vacant back in 2008 and early 2009. And the final component to the medical center was a building that we opened up recently with the Yale healthcare system, and the services that continue to be generated there. From a personal standpoint, for me, it's very poignant. Friends of mine who have been diagnosed with serious illnesses are now using this facility, and the stress that was eliminated by coming to North Haven versus going to various locations out of town has a remarkable impact on people's lives here in North Haven. So we're very grateful for the work that we've done. They've worked with us, Yale New Haven Hospital. 297 State Street continues to grow. More jobs are created here. 3 companies here. This was a vacant building, 397,000 square feet back in 2008. And I'm very proud of the 3 businesses that are in here that continue to expand in North Haven. And the renovations that have taken place, the money that's been put in to bring this building back up to professional standards has been remarkable here in town. Over at 341 State Street, nestled in the back of 333 State Street, this was a vacant building for years, for decades. The property owner, Richard Como, and I had a number of discussions. We introduced him to this new microbrewery concept, 12% brewery. I'm proud to report that they're in the building now, manufacturing micro beers, and soon a taste area, a little retail area will open up here that will add to this particular business. This is a business that's defined as a manufacturer of microbrews with a retail component soon to come. 33 Styles, we're proud of BYK, 148,000 square feet, ladies and gentlemen, that was vacant. after a trucking company moved out of state. BYK is a wonderful example, and David will appreciate this also, of a business in Connecticut that has expanded. The business is located in Wallingford, Connecticut, and they've expanded and added and grown in North Haven. That's what we must continue to try to accomplish, expansion of businesses that are currently here in town. Republic Drive, nestled in the back of Sackett Point Road. This is another wonderful entity that consists of a number of vibrant, dynamic businesses. And an example of economic development multiplying is Alternative Dental, who moved to North Haven about 18 months ago from another community. And now they've connected with many of the dentistries in town, and services are being used, and the multiplier effect of having that business in town now has created even more synergies with the dentistry industry here in town. I've talked about this before, and I'd like to give you a corporate analogy. In my business career as CEO, trying to attract new businesses from all over the country, one of the things we tried to do on our corporate billboard in our opening presentation as a CEO presenting to prospective businesses was show a pictorial collage of some of the companies that my company had had. And when we would bring in, as an example, a Nestle or a Unilever, and they saw on the corporate billboard companies like Gatorade, McCormick, Sara Lee, some dominant brands. North Haven's no different. We try to show some of our showcase companies, and having McKesson Industries in town, a national firm of a medical supply distribution center, has been very helpful to us when we look to attract other businesses in these sectors. We've talked before about Comcast Xfinity. This is another example of what was about 9,000 empty square feet, bringing them in. Now, for the residents of North Haven on Comcast service, we have a deeper penetration rate in terms of calls, service, and timeliness of service to our residents as a result of Comcast here. Over the course of the past couple of months, we took what became a vacant building and immediately filled it by recruiting Sunbelt Rentals. Now, Lou Proto's here today in the audience. He and I worked on this project and a number of projects across the town of North Haven. So the optics of this coming out of Universal Drive, going to Sackett Point Road, a beautiful building that is a resounding success so far here in the town of North Haven. Sunbelt Rentals, 250 Sackett Point Road. Universal Drive, as the plazas sometimes continue to change over, it's important for us to stay on top of any vacancies that emerge and immediately move into action to fill those vacancies. So this is a new business. We cut the ribbon here several weeks ago, and I'm happy to report they're doing very well in that plaza, in the Dick's Sporting Good Plaza on Universal Drive. C. Coles is a company that came to us a couple of years ago. But here's another example now of how we can expand with a company from a green energy standpoint. So C. Coles and their contractor to put solar on their building worked with us, and solar has gone on now with C. Coles. So when we see the expansion of that and the green energy multiplier effect by the utilization of solar, we see greater synergies emerge in our town. And we're proud of the fact that C. Coles is doing very well. 200 Elm Street, this is an example of a business that continues to reinvest back into its business here in the town of North Haven, with paved parking lots, new striping. You see the yellow on the pole, building being renovated. These are so important to us as municipalities, to have these businesses be confident enough to reinvest back into the town. Amici Tavern, through the tornado on May 3rd back last year, was devastating for this particular restaurant, who had just come to town in a building that was struggling. Amici Tavern put a great deal of money into the restaurant, and then suddenly, through the wicked, fickle finger of fate, a tornado hit and devastated the restaurant. Many times we as elected officials have to be a resource. We help them with the DOT, with a tree along the side. They continue to put money back into this restaurant, and they reopened, and we're proud of the fact that they came back. They came back from a great deal of turmoil. 2 Montewiese Avenue, this was something, and I give Arnold Peck a lot of credit. I think he's here today also. I saw him earlier in taking a dilapidated building in an area and really working with us, not only here, but also with the Carter Mario building, and that's where Arnold and I really started to work. So thank you, Arnold, for your collaboration there. 18,000 square feet, a new building down in the Montewiese section. This is another example of what we focus in on, trying to have businesses expand, existing businesses. First Fuel, a proud member of our business community, built the 18,000 square foot Butler building facility, increased their business. Their president, Roger Rossi, I've known for years and worked very closely with, and we're thankful for them expanding here in town. For 10 years, ladies and gentlemen, after the Clintonville Manor went out of business, we had a dilemma on our hands. And we thought 5 years ago we had a solution with Maplewood coming in, doing a senior assistant living facility. And as we tried to close out that ball game in the ninth inning, the closer on the mound, Mike Frieda, gave up a couple of runs and we lost that ball game. Maplewood unexpectedly decided that they didn't have the financial wherewithal to build the assistant living facility. We quickly got back into action. I had a couple of days rest and got back on this mound and started to throw some warm-up pitches, and the arm felt pretty good. And we worked with a man by the name of Mike Juno from Seattle to bring in the landing of North Haven. We immediately moved into action with them, and what you see here is the end result. This facility has already accepted applications, and I've had more baby boomers come to me and say, Mr. Frieda, thank you. We're going to be moving our parents who once lived in North Haven back into North Haven because they're at other facilities around the state. So this officially has opened up, and we're proud of the fact that the services it offers, taking an empty parcel of land and building this beautiful facility, putting it on the tax rolls, and creating a great optic in that area for our great town. Gargano Dentistry, a remarkable comeback here. They did an outstanding job. I was there, I saw the owners in taking an historic site and preserving the charm on Washington Avenue, right near the Broadway section, and expanded in the back. And this now was a building that was in question, and they restored it to a wonderful facility that's providing outstanding services. What we're seeing, ladies and gentlemen, in some of our plazas, retail plazas, not only here but across the state, is the complexion of some of the plazas are changing. It has become very difficult to attract anchor retailers as the retail sector has been bombarded with a diminished brick and mortar level of sales due to the fact that online sales continue to grow. So some of the plazas, we see these fitness centers coming in. And we were there. My type of business, by the way, I went in there, weightlifting, all types of equipments. I actually wanted to pick up a couple of barbells and dumbbells, but I already worked out during the day, and Gary Carliglio was here. He was with me there. So a wonderful facility. And I'm grateful to them because they helped us fill at least 18,000 square feet there. Bagelicious, this was an example of Taco Bell going out of business with KFC. This company, this business is doing very well. We are trying to expand with them. We would love to see them and try to help them put a drive-through along the side, the north side of that building. And we're working with them to see if there's an expansion opportunity in a different part of town with perhaps a second entity. That we'll report on at a future meeting. 84 Washington Avenue, the building was in disarray. It was a bad optic in the center of town. And I'm very happy that the company that came to me in the beginning introduced me to this particular company, and this credit union now, we cut the ribbon there a couple weeks ago, doing outstandingly well so far. So I thank American Eagle for being part of our business community. The North Haven Shopping Center. Joe Maruzzi has been a godsend here. He took over this plaza and we've worked closely with him, but he himself has done an outstanding job. And I'm happy to report that very soon we're going to be at full occupancy here, and the money he put into this plaza to restore it has been magnificent for us here in town. And on the top you see Surge Fitness. The sign has recently gone up and soon to be open. And this will be on the south side of the plaza. And the entrance point will not be when you're looking at it from Washington Avenue. The entrance point will be, you'd have to drive in from Washington Avenue, drive around the left-hand side, and on the south side of the plaza, that's where the Surge Fitness will be. Town Fair Tire came in. They came out of the Inline Plaza in the Stop and Shop Plaza and opened up the new Town Fair restaurant. And this was another example of a business trying to work with us. They tried to keep the color schematic, they kept some trees, and they tried to put together a beautiful edifice, a beautiful building, and they're doing very well here in town. And this is something that we spent a lot of time on, ladies and gentlemen. After Leon's went out, Lou Proto and I went down to see Valentino, one of the owners of Adriana's. We took the Vigliotti family with us. We had lunch with the owner, and we put together at the Adriana's restaurant a deal in place for Valentino, one of the three owners of Adriana's, to open up this restaurant. It's going by the name of La Lupa. La Lupa should open up within the next week to 10 days. The restaurant has been completely renovated on the inside with a brand new bar area, high top tables, a wonderful new dining room. And this, I think, will be a remarkable success here. North Haven, despite the fact we have 24,500 people, continues to have an appetite, so to speak, for other fine dining institutions in addition to the restaurants that we have. So we're grateful for this. Fills out the empty Leon's building. Gengris Volvo, we've reported on before, that I wanted to comment on these auto dealerships. You know, being out there like I am, talking to hundreds and hundreds of people every month, I hear a lot of feedback. And in this case, with the car dealerships, you know, some people have said to me, Mike, Mr. Frieda, maybe we should have had an ice cream shop here, or maybe a small delicatessen up where one of the car dealerships are. And although that's nice, these car dealerships, not only do they pay significant taxes, but the job creation, ladies and gentlemen, the service technicians, $85,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year. And it ties into something that we think very importantly about. There are college students that may not want to go to a four-year institution. There are other trades that are so vibrant, that are begging for jobs. And our work with Gateway Community College, our state rep, Dave Yacarino, is a graduate there. He knows very clearly about what they're doing in North Haven with the Automotive Center. If we were to take a tour there, we'd see engines hanging from ceilings, cars with hoods opening up, contracts with major national car dealerships. These are important jobs, and they provide a great service to us, and they really pay well, the job creation. And Land Rover is another good example of that. The flats on Washington Avenue, working closely with Quinnipiac University to continue to see about master leases, and that has been working very well. Commissioner Lehman, Governor Malloy, our state delegation and our representatives were with me back in August, and we took a tour of the Amazon facility. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, over 2,000 jobs there, fully up and running, soon to be 3,000 jobs. And it'll probably be even higher. This is an example of an empty facility that was paying us $47,000 a year in taxes on vacant land. And the tax generation, the job creation has been magnificent here in town. Governor Malloy was in my office this past week before we went with our commissioner, David Lehman, to see Elbrook Steel. And Governor Malloy said, Mike, you've got an awful lot of good things happening here in town, he said. He said, I thank you for your contributions in this region to be so pro-business. And Amazon here has been a wonderful addition and a wonderful economic development multiplier in town. 1.2 million square feet, ladies and gentlemen. Carl DeVia, I give this man a lot of credit. He owned this plaza. It was vacant. It was dilapidated. Now we have 3 new businesses in. He's been a wonderful partner to work with, and we're very happy that Hello Gorgeous Salon has completed the vacancy that was there, and this now has been restored to a great deal of productivity here in town. 494 Washington Avenue, a plaza that's being renovated. As we work on big picture issues, trying to bring in new companies, new manufacturers, new retailers, we cannot neglect the smaller plazas that can create a negative optic in town if they're not maintained, or can create a positive optic in town with being renovated and new businesses going in. And I thank John Orsini, working with him, for his work here and helping us get that moving forward. 500 Washington Avenue, another good example of a building that's been rehabilitated, brought back to a productive usage. Opportunities. Kim is here with Mario from the New Haven Transit District. I'd like to thank them for working with them these past 2 to 3 years. 333 State Street is in the process of being, shall we say, eviscerated on the inside, cleanup being done, and I hope in the next 12 to 18 months that we will see the Greater New Haven Transit District here. We know that's going to happen. The time frame is still a little bit nebulous, but that will be a wonderful addition here in town. From a service standpoint, providing transportation for the elderly and disabled and others, and also bringing in those jobs here into our great town. 333 State Street next to Liuzzi's. We're working very closely with Mario DeGioia on this, and this will come to a very productive use soon. We're looking at restaurants that are interested here and perhaps some retailers. Another good opportunity for the town. Here's the update on the train station. We're in a 30% design phase, working with the DOT. In January or February, we'll be going to a 60% design phase. The design money, the $6+ million, has already been allocated and is being spent. Now we're trying to find out how the construction costs will be funded through the State Transportation Fund. I'm very happy to report, though, that the DOT is 100% behind this administration here in North Haven in trying to deliver this train station. And this will go at the end of Stiles. Now, behind the scenes, sometimes we as elected officials, we have to move into action and anticipate things. We had to introduce them to the Pfizer Corporation because Pfizer owns some of the land that the DOT would like to have the train station occupy. We put that meeting together in my office. Great synergies evolved from that, and a deal has been made, a letter of intent, that that train station will go there and some of the Pfizer property will be used to accommodate that. Cinemark. Lou Proto and I spending a lot of time on this. So I'm pleased to report that the 3 pads that are currently vacant, you will soon see the Hampton Inn, ground be broken for that in the next week to 10 days. Panera Bread will be building a brand new standalone restaurant there, and that'll be 2 of the 3 pads that will eventually be occupied. And we're working diligently on completing the 3rd pad site on Universal Drive. There's an example of what the Panera Bread will look like as the standalone. Now we'll be moving that from the Target shopping plaza, it's in line right now, to expand with Panera. And we've been talking to 3 different restaurants about occupying the current Panera Bread site at the end of the plaza in the Target shopping center. And this is Hilton Hampton, if you will. So the one pad remaining, this will be kind of what it's going to look like, and that'll be a nice addition in terms of going to Universal Drive. I had hoped, ladies and gentlemen, that I'd have a major announcement today, but Frida couldn't close it out by October 24th. We are looking to announce very soon 80,000 square feet of a national retailer coming into the Toys R Us, the Babies R Us, and Ulta. So stay tuned. Things are going along very nicely. And we have to close this game out. We've got to get this done. But we're working very collaboratively with the company, with the commercial real estate agent, and I hope I can make this announcement very soon. And I think it'll be a nice, exciting retailer to go there at a time, like I said, it's difficult to attract major retailers. So stay tuned. The former Sports Authority. This has now moved from a challenge to the opportunity category. This is 50,000 square feet. We are talking to an end user who wants 30,000 square feet. I can't say who it is because there's confidentiality agreements, but you're going to see soon something happen in at least 60% of this space at the Sports Authority. So stay tuned for that. DeLauro Plaza. This was another example. I went to Portofino's restaurant one night, talked to Alphonse. I had met his father previously. They purchased the site. They're demolishing the site. Lou Proto and I are working on this also. And we have half the site committed at this point. We can't divulge who it is because there are confidentialities, so half of the parcel is already taken in terms of a new business, a new retailer, a new restaurant who may be going there. On the former Boston Market site, Lou again and I are working here, and we have a commitment here for a national retail outlet that should be going here. We can't, again, divulge the name because of confidentiality, but you're going to soon see an announcement at the former Boston Market. And Old Glory, this is an example of a business moving from one point in town to another. You know, we have the greatest respect in this administration for Stephen Longobardi, who's here. He's a wonderful man, done a lot for the town. And in his two buildings, at 116 and 127, and I often joke with him that sometimes he doesn't get enough credit for the types of companies that he has in those buildings. Wonderful companies, professional companies with wonderful job creation. And I go back with his father, Vin, we miss him, God rest his soul. They've done a lot for the town. Unfortunately, Citizens will be moving and going to the Old Glory, which will be closing, and Citizens Bank will be going there, and that building will be rehabilitated and rebuilt. So that's an example of business moving from one part of town to another. This now has moved from a challenge to an opportunity. We have worked out, and I'm grateful to the North Haven Fairgrounds Association, we've worked out the parking issue. That is no longer a dilemma. This building, just so each of you know, is only still standing because if it was torn down, we would lose the zoning for a restaurant. They're grandfathered in on that site. So Mike Schaefer and I recently met. We've got a couple of good opportunities here. So it moved up from the challenge to the opportunity category. We are laser-like focused on this, ladies and gentlemen. We have to deliver this. We will deliver it. It's been vacant for too long. So I wanted to tell you about what's happening there. 425 Washington Avenue. This is the parcel in front of Amazon. Just so you know that Mickey Rabina and Jennifer Rabina still own this, and we are actively marketing this right now, and we have 3 different interested users, and this is going to happen. It's going to happen sooner than later. 447 Washington Avenue, that old building that was vacant for 24 years, demolished. This will be a mixed-use apartment complex with retail on the first floor. This is across the street from the Breakfast Nook. So there's an example of something that was vacant for decades that will be rebuilt and restored to a very productive use. And Chris Albrook and Lynn Weed, who's here, and I, 72 acres at the end of Dodge Avenue. There will be a major trucking company coming in there once we can work out a couple of details. And that'll be a great addition at the end of Dodge Avenue, which is in Defco Park. You know, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes perched precariously on the laurels of success continues to be a number of challenges. And North Haven is no different. I'd like to share with you what some of those challenges are. 235 Quinnipiac Avenue on the corner of Montewies. We've yet to figure out a solution. We'd like the owner to consider selling it. The price has been prohibitive. We're actively involved trying to figure out a solution at 238 Quinnipiac Avenue. We thought we found a solution at 102 at the Four Corners coming in from Montewies. We have a company that purchased the building. There's a project that's going before planning and zoning that's being contemplated right now. It's a mixed-use project that some of the residents in the area may not be endorsing at this point. So we'll wait and see to see what happens at 102 Middletown Avenue. This continues to be a challenge. Otis Spunkmeyer. This was the former Pennant Foods prior to Otis Spunkmeyer. There are VOC contaminants in the ground. And our strategy here is to see what brownfield money is available, because we have a number of interested people that want to purchase this site. Hotel groups, retailers, we've got to figure this out from a remediation standpoint. 497 Washington Avenue, when you drive by there out of Bradley Street, I'd like to tell you why you see this empty building. Because it's been purchased by a car dealership, but they don't have the acreage to build the car dealership. I'm begging them, please, I have buyers for it, sell it, we can do something there. And we'll see how this goes. So that's why that's vacant. It's being land banked by a car dealership that wants to go there, but can't go there because there's not enough lot size and acreage. 585 Washington Avenue, this now has been recently sold. So that's the good news. The struggle is we're trying to find out what can go there. So stay tuned to this. This may happen sooner than this is going to happen. So the Alpine Shopping Center on Scrub Oak Road, right? I gotta tell you, you might not realize it, but I have a very competitive side to me that has been honed on the baseball and football fields all across the state of Connecticut. And this is something that I've got to get a solution on, ladies and gentlemen. We have now an owner that's willing to sell it. However, we don't have a buyer yet that's willing to pay the price for it. And that's where this lies right now. But rest assured, this has captured our competitive attention, and the juices are flowing, the competitive juices on this to get a solution here. I hope to have an update on this the next time we meet. This is another dilemma, the Connecticut Natural Food Market. We have more people that want to buy this, more people that want to go there. But the landlord is not willing to put the money into it on a lease, and tenants do not want to put their own money into it on a lease because they don't own it. People want to put money into a building when they own it. So this is a dilemma right now that we're really working hard to try to figure out. Party City, a lot of interested parties here, so to speak, but there's not enough parking right now for the businesses that want to go there. When you drive by there, take a look. You see a wonderful building, but not many parking spaces. This has been a challenge for us right now. So what is the future outlook? I can tell you with a great deal of certainty that the choir of carousels will continue to sing a great deal of success here. And that success will manifest itself into continued new businesses coming. That I can guarantee. Continued top-line grand list growth. We had almost a 3% grand list growth this past year, one of the largest in the state of Connecticut. And continued job creation. And working closely with our Director of Finance, who's here, Ed Swinkowski, like I do every day, the town has been re-rated AAA. We've balanced our 10th consecutive annual budget. we've delivered surpluses that we've reinvested back into the town. And we continue to reinvest back into our great community in terms of improving infrastructure with no tax increase. So when we look to the future, yes, there are challenges, but the opportunities continue to be limitless. And for as long as the fine citizens in North Haven want to continue to have me as their chief elected official, there's one thing that I can guarantee with a great deal of certainty. There will be continued growth here in North Haven, top-line revenue growth, and new businesses coming in. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike, for that great update and all your hard work. Any quick questions for Mike before we move on?
Yeah, who's winning the World Series?
I got to go with the Nationals at this point, but on a lighter note, I'd just like to say that as a product of the 60s, I'm going to miss Old Glory, but they do have a store in Branford, and hopefully they'll continue in North Haven. So now, a reminder, please complete your surveys. I want to thank our sponsors. I think the presentations were great. The speed networking really worked out very well. Thank Fantasia for the great food that they prepared and for the great facility that they have here. And other than that, I think all I'd like to do is wish you guys a great day, great holiday season, and we'll see you in the spring. Thanks for coming.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.